On Sunday night, a 20-year-old man in London, Ontario, allegedly drove his car into a Muslim family, the Afzals, on the street, killing 4 people, injuring another. Nathaniel Veltman has been charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of attempted murder. The victims are Muslim. The suspect, Veltman, is a Dutch Christian name, not Jewish, and I mention that only because it's relevant to some of the political reaction we've seen. I'll get to that a bit later. This is a terrible event. It's a terrible crime. It's been front page news. Politicians of every stripe have made public speeches about it, in part because the victims were Muslim and it is allegedly a hate crime. One witness said Veltman was wearing a helmet and what looked like a bulletproof vest. Another witness said Veltman was laughing when he was arrested. Now, national police resources are being deployed, so it's being taken very seriously. There's also a chance that means it could be politicized by a very political Trudeau RCMP. But as of yet, Veltman has not been charged with a hate crime or with terrorism, though that may come. Witnesses say he was barreling down the road at a very high speed. One question that will likely have to be answered is, was he looking to kill Muslim people in particular, or was the Muslim family he happened to hit just the unlucky random victims? Because if I understand the facts correctly, the collision didn't happen outside a mosque or at a Muslim event, but on a busy street. Did Veltman know he'd be hitting Muslims? Did he see people who were visibly Muslims? I understand that the women were not wearing hijabs, for example. Is that a fact? Did he swerve into them? For what reason? I don't think all of that relevant information has been reported yet. It won't lessen the pain of the loss, 4 people are dead, but it will color the nature of the crime, won't it? So what do I think? What should we think? Well, obviously we're against violence. We're against murder. And if violence has a political or religious motive, that's a working definition of terrorism. We're against that, of course. So far, I've seen no reports of Veltman's social media footprints, anything he's said or done on Facebook or Instagram or whatever that might yield a clue to his state of mind. Facebook Canada says they've deleted an account that they think is connected with them. I wonder what they have removed from public view. I suppose it'll come out closer to the trial. I'm curious about that. But in some ways, I'm also glad Facebook took down his page. If he were following or liking other pages on Facebook, those people would obviously be blamed, even if there was no connection to the killing. I remember that Alexandre Bissonnette, the murderer at the Quebec City Mosque, followed Facebook pages related to the NDP, the separatist party in Quebec, and also Donald Trump. Well, guess which one of them was blamed by the media for the murder? So in that sense, I'm loath to do a political commentary about this tragedy just yet. We don't have all the facts in yet, and I don't know how much there would be to say other than to condemn it and to have sympathy with the victims. When a Jewish synagogue was attacked in Pittsburgh a few years ago, it was a mass murder of 11 people. I didn't feel the need to opine on it as news commentary. I obviously am against the murder. It was politically, and in that case, anti-Semitic motivations. It's a reminder that evil exists among us, but I frankly didn't feel compelled to make a larger political statement based on it, even though it was my tribe that was attacked. I guess I could have opined that violent anti-Semitism is not over, which would be useful to say only in that I think the media has stopped caring so much about it ever since anti-Semitism has become a de facto cause of the left, especially on campuses and in the Democratic Party in the States and the Labour Party in the UK. But as to the crime in London, Ontario, sometimes it takes a while, maybe days, maybe weeks, to distinguish a political crime from a crime of madness or another non-political motive, such as someone seeking media notoriety. I mean, for example, here's Nicholas Cruz, who murdered 17 people in a Florida school a few years back in what actually became America's worst school shooting.
Hello, my name is Nick, and I'm going to be the next school shooter of 2018. My goal is at least 20 people, With an AR-15 and a couple tracer rounds, I think I could get done. Location is Stone Douglas in Parkland, Florida. It's gonna be a big event. And when you see me on the news, you'll all know who I am.
So is that Florida mass shooting political? The murderer was so antisocial, he moved schools 6 times in 3 years. There were literally dozens of complaints to the local police department about him as a teenager in the years before the killing. A school counselor reported to the police that he was both suicidal and wanted to buy a gun, but no one did anything to stop it. After that Florida shooting, there was a political inquiry into it. It revealed how the school system ignored warning signs, and it showed that on the day of the shooting, local police were, well, they were cowardly. They hid rather than rushing in to save. The local sheriff, in fact, was eventually suspended by the governor, and other police resigned. And some students from that school became activists, including a leftist named David Hogg and a conservative named Kyle Kashuv. So that's the politics of that. What is going on here in London? I don't know if there were systemic failures that can have a political wrinkle to them. I think a lot will depend on the facts. Was it a deliberate targeting of Muslims? What was Veltman's motive? But even though I don't think those facts are known yet, well, there has already been a very political response. Of course, I understand a public response. It's a tragedy and most likely a crime. But I think the response has gone much beyond that for political reasons. Here's Justin Trudeau announcing that it was terrorism. Now, police haven't said that. Veltman hasn't been charged with that. Maybe Trudeau is using the word in its plain meaning. It is a terrifying and heartbreaking crime. But is it normal for a politician so senior, who is the boss of the RCMP, to announce publicly before a trial and the facts are aired, before the investigation is likely even done, to announce a conclusion like that? And to mention right-wingers, do we know that? Or is that just Trudeau's usual shtick of calling anyone who opposes him both racist and violent, and trying to hang this around the neck of Trudeau's political enemies?
Their lives were taken in a brutal, cowardly, and brazen act of violence. This killing was no accident. This was a terrorist attack motivated by hatred in the heart of one of our communities. They were all targeted because of their Muslim faith. This is happening here in Canada, and it has to stop. Mr. Speaker, we stand with the people of London and with Muslim communities across the country. We're going to continue to fund initiatives like the Security Infrastructure Program to help protect communities at risk and their schools and places of worship. We'll continue to fight hate online and offline, which includes taking even more action to dismantle far-right hate groups, like we did with the Proud Boys, by adding them to Canada's terror listing. And we'll continue doing everything we can to keep communities safe.
Who knows? Maybe those things will all prove to be true. Maybe Trudeau was briefed privately in a way the public hasn't been. Maybe the RCMP has already come to their conclusion. Could be. The reports of a helmet, body armor, speeding car, laughter, they certainly point to a terrible motivation. But unlike the Pittsburgh synagogue, which was obviously a Jewish target, this was on a more neutral highway. I guess I'm just saying it adds another question that may well be answered, but I don't know if it's been answered yet. You know, there was another mass attack in Canada on the street just 2 months ago, actually. Look at this story. North Vancouver stabbing attack. Suspect's friend says she's shocked as police search for motive. This guy, Yannick Bandaugo, if I'm saying it right, he allegedly stabbed 7 people on the street, murdering one woman, wounding the others. 6 of the 7 victims were women. That could be a coincidence, I don't know. But there wasn't a national reaction in the same way there is to the London attack. In fact, the news pretty much went away in a day out there in Vancouver. There wasn't a national movement of mourning. It didn't get the École Polytechnique treatment, the Montreal Massacre treatment, even though it was 6 women. I don't know why, other than my earlier point, crimes are not inherently political. Madness can be a factor, and let's be candid, please. The accused in the Vancouver stabbings is a visible minority, which doesn't fit the woke political narrative of, what did Trudeau say, right-wing, white supremacists, whatever. Again, I say let's wait for a trial for the facts to come out. But that's not what's happening in London, Ontario. It's political from the beginning. If Veltman did deliberately murder these people because they're Muslim, well, I believe in capital punishment for murder. So that's my view. And if he was motivated by politics or religion, we'll charge him with terrorism too. I don't think we have that yet. But what we do have is a media political class that already knows its script. For example, the government of Ontario is brutally shutting down businesses, churches, protests against the lockdown, but they specifically lifted those rules for a memorial for the London family, the Afzals. Now, I appreciate that. I'm sure the community does too. But either you say the rules are scientific and health-based, or you don't. Why is this funeral exempt but no other funerals are? Why is this political cause exempt but no others are? Well, actually, come to think of it, Black Lives Matter was exempt from anti-gathering rules too, come to think of it. Look, I want all of us to be able to meet in happy occasions and sad occasions. I don't believe the pandemic is an acute threat. But if the government really does, why would they allow a super spreader event like this? Because they don't really believe it's a super spreader event. Or if they do, they believe in politics even more. But let me show you just one moment from an otherwise touching memorial. It's a local London Imam. This guy, Munir El-Qassem. He spoke very briefly at the memorial. I'm going to show you his whole speech. And it was nice. He was talking about community support until suddenly it went off the rails. And he connected the attack on the Afzal family, done by, allegedly, this 20-year-old Dutch Christian. This imam connected it to the recent war between Israel and the terrorist group Hamas, which is based in the Gaza Strip. Now, you can be pro-Israel or you can be pro-Hamas. I think if you're for Hamas, a terrorist group that's literally banned in Canada, I think you have some explaining to do. But it is a point of view. But what does that have to do with this case? At all. Nathaniel Veltman sounds like a Jewish name, but it isn't. But so what? That seems to be enough for this imam. Was he some instrument of Israel? Did Israel get in the car and barrel down the street and try and pick off Muslims? Well, here, watch the imam's whole speech and you decide for yourself.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Brother Bilal Rahal asked me to share final words. Well, I don't have to speak. Each and every one who's present here is a final word. You all said everything that needs to be said, except one angle I would like to share with our officials. Now, there's a reason why they say the world is a small village. Every country has a foreign policy. I just want to say, whatever is happening in Jerusalem and Gaza is related to whatever happened in London, Ontario. Period. Thank you.
So he links this killing on the street to foreign policy? This 20-year-old kid is now an instrument of foreign policy. He links it to Jerusalem. He specifically tells the politicians to believe him on that. And when he's done, wild cheering and a chant I couldn't quite make out. So you're blaming the Jews. I mean, it's one thing to blame Veltman. I get it. It sounds like he pretty clearly did this, according to witnesses. Why he did it is yet unclear. That's my real question. But This wasn't a condemnation of Veltman. This was an explicit message to the politicians in the attendance, absolutely clearly blaming foreign policy and, I suppose, Canadian support for Israel, blaming Israel. Israel? How's Israel to blame? Is it because Veltman sounds like a Jewish name? That cheering, holy cow, that cheering at a memorial, that was pretty boisterous cheering, wasn't it? This mass killing of the Afzal family, an innocent family cut down on the street, is an awful tragedy. It sounds like it was murder. And it certainly could be terrorism or motivated by anti-Muslim hatred. Could be. If so, throw the book at him. But in Canada, even if Trudeau has a really urgent tweet to make, we usually have the trial first before announcing a conclusion or a conviction. We have to get along peacefully in Canada, and we have to eschew violence. And I think that applies to everyone, including an imam who got wild applause for blaming Israel while Canadian politicians of every party sat there in silence. That's an excerpt from my daily show, the Ezra Levant Show. Every day I do a monologue on the news of the day, then I interview an interesting guest, and then I read my hate mail. You gotta subscribe. Go to rebelnews.com.